Hi folks, it's time for another reading from the GW Staff Alumni WhatsApp group. Things that get sent to me on a daily, well, next to daily basis over there. If you like what I do, the Composite Games tab is down below. If you go there, even if you're in international waters or anywhere else, you can go and get yourself 5% off at checkout using the promo code Northern Exile down below. Not only do you get money off your models, but you also help out the channel. Composite Games also do 20% off of most of their stock anyway, which means you could get up to 25% off your next order with Composite Games. So if you need some models, head on over there. They're really good folks. Thank you for sponsoring the channel. Moving on, if you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below, and if you really like what I do and want to buy me a pint, then that information is also down below. The Patreon is there. If you want to send me any Q&A questions or get one-to-one help, feedback, talking, anything like that, head on over there and come and have a little chat to me, and we'll get to know each other a little bit. Speaking of get to know people, let's do some Games Workshop stories, shall we? Noob Stolt says, "Hey North, I worked for Games Workshop in the US for about a decade, given a few months, and whilst I have no real nightmares about bosses and other staff, I have small ones, but nothing for a video, I have a lot of instances of customers being, shall we say, interesting. I worked at Games Workshop on the east coast of the US, and I won't narrow it down any further, just in case customers recognise themselves in the video. They shouldn't, but you never know." Okay, so this is one of the first customer videos I've actually been able to do, because whilst I get a lot of things about Games Workshop's business practices and the actual offices, things like that, I very rarely get them about customers, and I want more. So if you are a DW staffer, or a staffer from any sort of walk of life in the hobby, and you've got any interesting things about customers, send them to me, because they are the most funny, to be honest with you. The first incident came around 2016, when detachments were really starting to become a big thing. I hated them. Yeah, you and me both, brother. You and me both. Detachments were the bane of my hobby existence. They were awful. Absolutely awful. Okay. He goes on to say, they were bad, okay? And really only designed to meta chase and sell models we were not ever likely to sell otherwise. Yep, I noticed that as well. And most of the things you needed to make, the bigger, more nastier detachments, most of the models that you needed to make those things were ones that wouldn't really sell. They were all really undesirable things that became way overpowered because Games Workshop wanted to sell them. Ridiculous, right? Anyway. A local dude called John obviously felt the same way, as when his friend's Salamander Skyhammer detachment threw him from the tabletop at the top of turn 2, he responded by tipping said table over on its side. 2 1,500 point armies were hurled to the floor, and all of our top scenery with it. So not only did John lose the game, a friendship, and the bulk of his Dark Eldar army, he also was banned for life from the store. A bad day all round. Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like, I know it's really hard. Like, if you have anger issues, it's really hard to not just act on them and, you know, and just flip out. But you are just cutting your own nose off to spite your face. Really. Like, that's exactly what you're doing. I know, I'm there with you. Look, I have a temper as well, right? I've had to deal with it. I've had to go to therapy. I've had to get it sorted out. And I've noted through therapy that the best thing for me to do is to let it out in small doses. So if I see something that really annoys me, I'll just say. You know? If I want something, I'll say. If I don't want to do something, I'll say. I won't bottle it up. I'll just come out and say it. And you know what? Life's been pretty good since I started doing that. Have I lost some friends? One or two. Yeah, one or two. But most of them I've grown closer to. Most of the people that I know I've grown a lot closer to because they're like, oh, right, cool. Well, there's no room for interpretation now. I know exactly what North wants and when he wants it, sort of a thing, you know. Or what he doesn't want and when he doesn't want it. That's what I would do. A lot of this can be solved with communication, you know. A lot of this stuff about throwing armies on the floor and flipping out and ruining your, not just your hobby space, but your friend's hobby and hobby space as well. I mean, you know, it's not worth it, man. It's never worth it. It's a game of toy soldiers at the end of the day. These stories will jump around, by the way, as I'll write them as I remember them. Okay, no problem. Maybe I should just leave the dates out. Up to you, man. The second story comes from a game day we had on a Sunday that we've been looking forward to for months. So my manager was a really good guy, from California, but we won't hold that against him. He was always putting on events on the lowdown for customers to get involved in, and he was actually really good at including everybody in the store. Even if you didn't like gaming, he'd have you paint a bit of scenery or do something to give you some sort of ownership of the games going on in the store. We had a customer, Mike, who would come in and belittle the gaming side of the hobby every chance he got. He would derisively call those who played 40k as a game childish gamers, quote unquote, and told people rather loudly that the actual 40k hobby, quote, is building and painting and collecting, not gaming, unquote. How he got away with this for so long, I'll never know, but he did, and it was really annoying. Being new to the store, I didn't feel it was my place to reprimand this guy, but his behaviour granted on me to the point that finally, as we got to the game day, and he was ruining it with his bemoaning of the game in general, I snapped. I had something similar. Let's go take a little drink here. I had something similar with my manager when I was working at GW. So he was very much a building, painting, collecting kind of guy, right? Now, whatever part of the hobby you're into, that's fine. That's completely fine. There's no problem with that at all. You know, get on with it. It's all you. The problem is when you start telling other people that they're not doing it right because they're not doing it in the same way that you are. And my manager would do that. He would openly call people, Fortnite meta chasers and things like that. You know, like he would say like, all these people who are video gamers who come in, all Dawn of War fans who come in and they just want to play 40k, they're not real hobbyists. He would literally say that. He'd say they're not real hobbyists, right? The ones who are doing the painting and the building and all that, they're the real hobbyists. I never got that, and I never got how we got away with it as a manager. It's just something that we had a guy called Mike. Not his actual name is Mike. Not he's a nice guy, and he would actually tell this guy to his face, look, you're not a real gamer. You're not a real hobbyist. You're into the game. You're a gamer, right? It is an argument I've heard pervade by older people in the hobby. There are a lot of really cool older guys in the hobby, but there are also some not so cool older guys in the hobby, who tend to think, it's that meme from The Simpsons of the doctor who's like, the scientist who's giving a talk to kids, and he's got this trolley with like loads of bouncing balls from the periodic table bouncing around inside of it. He's like, hey, this is great, and one of the kids says, can I have a go? And he says, no, you won't appreciate it in the same way that I do. And he keeps doing it, and that's exactly the same thing, right? You're not doing it in exactly the same way that I am, therefore you're doing it wrong. Bollocks, stupid, it shouldn't be in the hobby, but there we go. I'd like to know from different people, from like Magic the Gathering and things like that, do you have the same thing in your hobbies? Do people like say you're not doing it the same way I am, so you're not doing it right? I don't know. Anyway, back to the story. This guy sat with his back to the games, painting on his own, and complained the entire day that the gaming side of the hobby was cancer, it was too loud, etc. Finally, I told him this was a games day and had been advertised as such, and if he did not like that, he was free to paint his models somewhere else. He told me, do you even know who I am? Quote unquote. To which I responded, no. Why the hell should I? Quote unquote. It turns out he was our manager's brother, and in fact, he was putting the manager up in his apartment when he got the Games Workshop job on the East Coast. Whoops. To be fair, the manager pulled me aside, and I thought I would be fired. Turns out he just apologised for his brother's behaviour. We moved on, but that idiot was unfortunately there to stay until the manager moved to greener pastures a few years later. When I took over the store, his visits dropped off until he stopped coming entirely. Well, looks like you've had the last laugh, you know what I mean? So, happy ending, I suppose. Story number 3 is a doozy, and involves a gaming night at the store being rudely interrupted by the breaking up of a marriage, right there on the shop floor. So, we are doing our own thing, and generally having fun at the gaming tables. I am wandering around making sure all the games are progressing well, and people are into it. There is a kid, Brad, who comes in with his parents all the time. His parents are typical city slickers. To be honest, The kinds of parents that would have a kid who's about to be sucked into Narnia or something. Uncaring, rich, career obsessed, cheating on each other probably. You know the type. Yeah, I know the type. Yeah. Every 90s whimsical, urban fantasy story, these are the parents, essentially. All Brad wanted to do was pretend he was leading an orc charge every week, which he did, with great abandon and success. He had a decent army of around 2,000 points paid for by his parents, who would literally bring him in, leave this 12-year-old kid in the store, and then go and have a night to themselves. Nothing wrong with that on its own, but it did seem kind of neglectful when the attitude was, quote-unquote, they needed a break from him for the night. Their words. Wow. Dude. Never, ever say shit like that to or around your kid. What are you doing? That's horrible, man. I could tell this kind of crushed Brad, who was a really good kid from my conversations with him, and one of his teachers actually came in to buy him a war boss for getting good grades, as he felt he needed cheering up. I mean, that's a hell of a reach, right? It seems like I was not the only one seeing this constant grinding down of feelings and anger that was affecting Brad. Dude, that's horrible. It's even worse when the abuse is like under the radar like that. Do you know what I mean? It's not like physical abuse, it's more like mental. That's terrible. On the night in question, his parents are in fine form, throwing snide remarks at each other and generally being very unpleasant to each other and people around them. Finally, I head over to where Brad is setting up for a game with another guy. Orcs versus Black Templars, if I remember correctly. Then we hear screaming as Brad's mom is pointing her finger in his dad's face, shouting about going back to that fucking Skankor. Wow. And I am taking everything. The whole shebang. She storms over and demands that Brad put his toys, quote-unquote, away and come with her. His dad comes over and tells Brad to go with him instead. Oh no. Fucking hell. This is why narcissists shouldn't have children. Do you know what I mean? This is why. He's not even a kid to them. It sounds like he's some sort of possession. That's like, you can use that person to get one up on the other person. This is something I've actually gone through, and it's not fun, right? I wasn't the kid in this scenario, right? But I have had, a kid used against me, in the past where it's like, give me this or else sort of a thing, or else you're not seeing your kid. It's not nice. And it seems that these two parents are trying to do it to each other, which shows you the kind of level of human we're dealing with here. Anyway, another argument erupts. In the end, I head over and tell them both they need to calm down and leave my store before I call the cops, and that, frankly, I fear for Brad's safety, and so I will let him decide whether he wants to go with them or not. Wow. This is legally what I'm supposed to do if I see child abuse child abuse in the store in any way. Yes, you are. So in GW, he goes on to say it here. Okay, fair enough. But in GW, if you see anything like that going on in the store, you take it to your first point of contact straight away. You call them up, or you go to them if they're there on the shop floor, and you tell them what's going on. And then, if there is an immediate danger from towards the child from someone, you get in between the danger and that child, right? That's what you do. You don't take them off the shop floor. You don't put them anywhere where they can't be seen, because that way lies trouble, right? They should always be out and about where people can see them. But you do get between them and you call the police if you have to. I'm scanning ahead. It seems like this staff member made the correct decisions all the way through, but let's have a little read. I might have missed something. So, this is legally what I'm supposed to do if I see child abuse in the store in any way. I took it to my first point of contact already, and now I'm placing myself between that child and harm. Brilliant. It's like you've read that verbatim from the training, which is great. The dad is now in my face, swearing he will beat the shit out of me, and I instruct my staff to call the cops. I ask Brad what he wants to do, and Brad says he wants to stay in the store with us. I tell a staff member to take Brad behind the register, but in full view of everybody. You never isolate a child in the back. Yep, of course. Until the cops get there. His parents stick around and screamed at the cops that I was holding their kid hostage, quote unquote, and I felt like I was about to lose my job and probably go to jail. Yeah, man, you did a ballsy move. That was a ballsy move. Instead, the cops, knowing the law and seeing the state of of his parents, came in and asked Brad what was up. He told them, and they asked Brad's parents if there are any other relatives he can stay with whilst they sort their shit out. In the end, Brad's grandparents, sweethearts who loved the hobby, came and picked him up, and he spent a very happy long weekend painting and building, apparently. He came back the next week, but I'd only ever see one of his parents come back to pick him up afterwards, and they never spoke to me ever again. It remains my most stressful memory working for GW. Phew, that was a heavy one. I'll send them more funny stories over next time, Stoltz. Jesus, man, that sucks. But I've never seen... Thankfully, this never really happened to me. It happened once with a, shall we say, a Dave. In fact, I think it was my very first GW story that I actually told on the channel, where there was a kid being abused in the store, away from the store. Right, it wasn't in the store; it was away from the store, and it was dealt with by my manager at the time, and he did an amazing job. Me and that manager have not seen eye to eye, and we never have done on a lot of things, and we still probably don't even today. But he handled that like a pro. If you've not seen that video, go and check it out. But he handled it like an absolute Chad, man. He sorted that situation out straight away. It's not great, but being in the hobby, being in 40k, being surrounded by younger people, sometimes you do see it, right? You see the signs. You know, you don't call people out, you don't accuse them, but you do keep an eye out for different things. Like if you see a bruising or anything like that, then you know. It's not really your place to get to the bottom of it. You're a Games Workshop manager, right? You're not a teacher. You're not a legal guardian or anything like that. You're not there to look after the kid. You're not a daycare service. At the end of the day, you're a retail business. But if you see something that is above and beyond, like this kid's in trouble, it's your duty to isolate that, get in front of the kid in that trouble, and make sure that it's sorted out rather than actually letting it carry on. In the end, be a good person. There are a lot of things in Games Workshop where we were told to basically, don't get involved if it's a family thing. But there were other times as well where I would simply be like, yeah, that's not happening. Like if I see a kid is in trouble or is being abused or something really bad is happening, I'm coming down on that. Like there's no reason why I wouldn't. At the end of the day, Games Workshop staff are heroes to kids. And if I was in trouble, I would want one of my heroes to step in and help me out. That's how I think. Right, I've seen it happen before. GW staff are awesome guys. I've seen them climb down from things that are truly spectacularly awful. When it comes to like trouble with kids, trouble with people with mental health issues, or people with illnesses, mental health illnesses, things like that. I've seen some shit. I've seen them really do well. I mean, we had a staff member who did an amazing job of calming a kid down who went absolutely crazy in the store. Not because he was losing a game or anything. He literally saw somebody who had abused him outside and went completely insane. He just went off the rails. And instead of like judging this kid, the other staff member, right, because I was on the other side of the store, the other staff member actually got in front of that and said, hey man, he got down onto his level, said, hey man, what's going on? And slowly calmed him down, brought him down until he told him. Then we called the police and all these other things happened. But yeah, GW staff members, man, I tell you what, they are amazing. They are amazing people, and this hobby should safeguard the youngest members of the hobby. I would like to think that we do that, and that we're all essentially unofficial dads and mums. So keep an eye out, lads. Keep an eye out. Make sure everyone's all right. Anyway. Love you all long time. I will speak to you tomorrow, where we're going to be doing some Leagues of Votann lore. See you then. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.